headline for the next session, the detergent company eyeing food, clean food, ha ha ha. No, no, no.
Exactly.
So please, I hope you will forgive me afterwards. But
That's fine.
Brigitte Andersen and Valerio Nannini, you come from Novozymes in Denmark, and you actually manufacture detergent or enzymes for detergents.
Enzymes, not
for detergents, right?
detergents.
But you also manufacture a load of other enzymes as well. And we've been talking about, how can we produce food in the future? We've been talking about bioreactors, mycelium, cell ag, etc. But who would you say sit at the core of the future when it comes to production of proteins?
We do.
You do. And why do you do that? Why?
Because we have the experience. We have been working on making proteins. Enzymes are also proteins for the last 30, 40 years. So we're going to use our core technology to actually produce food ingredients now instead. So just moving into another area using the same biotech technology that we have used forever.
But I'm kind of left without words here, because suddenly we think that food production is something either for startups or for farmers. And then suddenly you come in from left field and say, no, we've been here for a long time. And we have the capacity to scale production. Valery, is this true, or is this just a pipe dream, or are you there?
No, well, first of all, maybe we need to talk more about who we are inside Novozymes.
Yeah,
we're a startup inside Novozymes.
You're a startup as well, okay.
So in one way or another, we're a corporate venture startup like many of the people here. The money doesn't come from outside investors, it comes from Novozymes itself. So we need to establish ourselves inside the organization and make sure we are delivering, obviously, growth to the organization through the inventions and making use of the larger Novozymes capabilities to make it happen.
Okay, but how come you started eyeing food?
Well, it's a natural trajectory, right? Because enzymes, first of all, are part of the food system. Secondly, the technology is fermentation. We've been using for enzymes. We've been using it recently also for microbes and probiotics, prebiotics. And now we're going to use them in proteins, because the creation of proteins we can do a lot of by using the technology that we've been mastering for 30 years, like Brigitte said. So I think it's really in our core. It's just a question now to move yourself from producing, let's say, a few kilos of enzymes to tons of products, which is a big
It's a big
change.
shift, of course.
But I think the capability of a company like Novozymes is there to be able to be going in that direction.
But now I hold the I don't know, did you bring any pictures?
We did, but it doesn't matter.
If you want to...
It doesn't matter, we can skip it. We're here to chit-chat with you rather than showing our slides.
No, but I think it's okay, so the whole issue of scaling things, I mean, we've heard the last few, there was, of course, the deal between Clara Eggs and InBev, the huge beer company a year or two ago, when they were, Clara Eggs were turning to a beer company for scaling things in vats, etc. We had the other day, Just Eat Just came out, but they're now ordering 250,000 liter bioreactors of unknown capacity because we really don't know if they can exist yet. It's like a going to the moon type of project. But I mean, when you produce things, enzymes today, how large bioreactors do you have? Do you have enormous ones?
We have enormous one. You can just visit Kalundborg, one of our Danish production sites. You can see these huge tanks. And you need to go up in volume because it's such a big volume of proteins you need to actually, just to supplement what we have of animal-based proteins today. We're not going to replace all the animal proteins, I don't believe that. But just to be able to meet the demand of proteins in the future, we really need to scale and scale the protein production as we do now. If you look at Perfect Day, for example, in the US, they're using exactly the same technology as we are. They're just not born into a biotech company, so they don't have the skills in scaling up. They don't have the tanks already. They don't have the whole infrastructure as we do.
So what would you say are the sectors here that we need to improve upon? Science, I guess, talent. There are not too many scientists out there that know how to do this. They're not the process of production here is kind of tricky too. I can imagine.
Yeah, I think what is the major gap that we at least here is the step from doing lab scale, pilot scale, and then scale up to real commercial production. That is the real big gap as we see it now. It's easy just to run a 10-liter fermenter in the lab, but getting it up to real production, that is the challenge, and that is where we have the big gap.
Yeah, okay. But let's do a little predictive thinking here. So we think ourselves into the future somewhere where we suddenly have solved the scale issues with producing things in tanks. So how efficient is it to produce proteins this way as compared to raising animals and then killing them?
I think if we start doing the life cycle analysis, we are at least comparable with soy protein isolate. Yep. Not the soy plant by itself, but if you start isolating the protein, then we are in the same range. Much better than animal-based proteins.
So you're saying that you can replace soy essentially a few years from now?
Soy protein.
Soy protein, yes, yeah. Soy protein, of course. Okay, so my tofu will come from a bioreactor in Denmark in the future.
It could easily be, yes.
Could be so. Okay, interesting.
It's just better tasting because you don't have the bitter off flavor as you have for many of the legumes.
No, exactly, and then I don't have to transport it on a huge tanker from Brazil either,
exactly,
right?
Exactly.
Okay, so and when you talk about these new proteins, will you take these proteins to market under your own Novozymes beef brand or something like that?
No, not at all. The overall idea is to first of all work in a segment where there's demand or lower volume, so more in what we would call the health and nutrition segment, where proteins can make a big difference. The idea is to use biotech to move more into what we call the mimicking of some of the scarce proteins that are in nature, which are beneficial for either health or nutrition. And at the same time, I would say you are going to position yourself as an ingredient company, therefore you need to work with the traditional FMCGs or other type of smaller companies to be able to produce something that is then affordable to the people to put it into the final solution.
Because all proteins aren't created equally. They are different, right? So you really need to understand proteins or enzymes properly in order to be able to create exactly that enzyme or protein. So
exactly.
So it's not just a blanket protein.
No. We select one or specific proteins to produce. We're not going for a total. We can't replace all the soy proteins, for example. It's one specific protein we are going for, and then the next one, and the next one.
In fact, it's not the so-called conventional market. Today here, we've been talking about the conventional markets, which is what we call the traditional meat, dairy, seafood, or whatever other type of proteins are in that conventional market. Of course, we can participate to that conventional market by applying technology to somebody who needs it, and that's an appeal here for anybody who wants to look at collaboration. We're open to collaboration, but not producing directly what we call the big biomass and the big volumes. Where we're interested is really to work on the science of proteomics, which is the science of the proteins in your body, understand what sometimes they are carriers of some bioactives or minerals. So it's a bit more, and that's why we call ourselves advanced proteins, because some of them are not yet invented, what we're trying to work on.
Okay, very good. So most proteins are probably out there to be invented yet, right? So
yeah.
No, it's interesting. That also means that you're hooking into the personalized food segment as well, which is a really high value segment, or presumably at least in the future, right? So okay, so how far away are we from seeing this protein revolution from vats at Novozymes?
Head of science should answer here.
Yeah, our most ambitious timeline saying that we have the first product on the market in 24.
Okay, 2024. Okay,
yeah.
so
24,
that's
25.
soon. Yeah, that's soon.
We're obviously working in multiple targets, because you know very well, innovation doesn't happen like that. Some fail, some die, some go. We have the luxury of having the big infrastructure behind us that helps us to continue, despite we might have some failure. versus some of the startups here, which instead have one shot and that's it. And that's
Yeah.
where I think we are really lucky
Yeah,
in that sense.
yeah, because Novozymes isn't just any company. It's, I think you're voted the most innovative company in Denmark, for instance. You're a huge behemoth in biotech. How much do you turn over each year?
Around 2 billion euros.
2 billion
equivalent.
euros. I mean, like it's a huge company, right?
Yeah.
And an innovation leader. So this actually gives me hope for the future of proteins. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank
Welcome.
you.
Thanks
Thank
a
you.
lot.
Thanks for inviting.
Now we have a short break for you to be able to consider what you listen to, and then we'll be back in just a short few minutes.